Very good afternoon to all of you. Any guesses as to who the power supplier to this facility is? Of course, it's an easy guess, Southern California Edison. So we'll have an executive insight session. I'm here to introduce the session to all of you. If you notice, there are two massive transformations happening globally. The first one is obviously AI-driven digital transformation, which we have been talking about. The other is energy transition. So we are all moving towards a decarbonized future, and these two transformations are intertwined. So if you look at somebody like Southern California Edison, I'll spend a few minutes on what does an intelligent enterprise mean for a utility today. But before that, the four forces, the digital, data, cloud, and AI, have converged to create this force multiplier that's helping almost every sector, every industry rethink their own business as an enterprise. And obviously, energy and utilities is big time impacted by this. So when we talk about an intelligent enterprise, intelligent utility, intelligent energy company, there are three traits that we believe define an intelligent enterprise. One, it has to have a very smart, resilient, safe, and secure grid, right? So you use AI to deploy that. The second is to have experience, customer experience at a superior level. Southern California Edison is a great example. They want to be the best-in-class utility in the world, and therefore their focus on customers, giving them an omni-channel experience is something that they are using through AI. And the third is every single business function that converges to deliver this experience, that converges to deliver this resilient, safe, and secure grid has to be supported by an intelligent enterprise, right? Procurement, supply chain, all of it. SCE has started this journey early on. We are very proud to be their partners for 28 plus years now, 29 years going. And we partnered together to deliver value across the enterprise. But some of the big things that you will hear from Todd today is how they have taken a multi-layered approach from data and strategy for AI, deployment of different digital tools across the value chain, and then focusing a lot on what you see on the right side, the safety, resilience of the grid, the cost optimization, customer satisfaction, and then compliance is a big factor in a regulated utility. And especially if you're an integrated utility, compliance with laws and regulations is extremely important, and they've used that. And of course, the new generation of utility workers, how do you make them more productive, more familiar with AI so that they can deliver the future of the grid? Here is a quick case study, and I don't want to steal the thunder of Todd, but we worked together to create a forecasting model for Southern California Edison. Now, in the electric business, the most challenging and most complex problem is to forecast the load on the grid. Just to put you in perspective, by 2045, the carbon neutrality goal that California has set, SC's load is expected to grow by 80%. Therefore, the ability to forecast the load on the grid is extremely important, and they are using advanced solutions, advanced technologies using AI and ML to drive significant efficiencies, 95% reduction in forecasting time, to also make it very accurate so that they can deliver a more resilient grid to the service territory. With that, I welcome Henry, the partner at Avasant, managing partner at Avasant, and Todd Inlander, SVP and CIO at Southern California Edison, to take this discussion forward.
Should we move further away from each other?
Yeah, it seems that way. So thank you, Dash, for that introduction. It really sets up things nicely for just a little bit about the utilities industry. We could sit here for hours and talk about what's happening there, but we just have 25 minutes. When I see presentations like what Dash just went through, it really reminds me of how much things have changed over the last 5 to 10 years. If you think about it, what was electric utilities? Very large, carbon-based generation plants, very reliable, stable, sending one-way electricity down again a very reliable grid, supporting our industries, businesses, and homes, to a fairly simple metering system, and hopefully doing that at a reasonable price. But things are changing. a lot and very rapidly. And today we have a leader in the utilities industry who's helping make that change and where they're going to support our economy, essentially. Todd, who's leading at Southern Cal Edison. And I thought it would be great if you could start off by just giving us an overview of your journey at SCE, and maybe just introducing our audience here in terms of, what are the key things, the key business value streams, operational value streams that a utility runs and that your digital and IT organization support. It's quite complex, but I thought not everyone here is very knowledgeable on utilities, so I thought it'd be good to start off with that.
Sure. No, thank you. Thanks for having me. When I started this role, it felt like the biggest focus, this was, 13, 14 years ago? And the biggest focus, I would say at the time, was cost reduction. So bring our rates down. We outsourced. That was a focus of ours. Then it was all about system reliability. Then this thing called digital came up, and we were trying to ride the digital train, if you will. And then the next area that occurred, and unfortunately is still occurring, is what do we do about wildfires and the spread of wildfires? And then now it's more about the digital grid. So historically, my focus was on what you would consider more traditional CIO work, SAP, data center. It's now evolving towards creating this truly autonomous, self-healing grid. I mean, that's really the future. We spent a lot of time transforming customer service, transforming back office, transforming IT, but I would say very little time on transforming the way we operate our grid. And I think that for me is I try to spend my time, I'd say, where the action is or where the problem is. And I think for us, the greatest opportunity is for sure, like, how do we create this grid of the future that is also not highly dependent on human beings running around? So we are becoming more, we have to become, and we're working on becoming more like a technology company. When I joined, I mean, right now we're a 140-year-old company, and sometimes I wonder if some people have been around since the beginning. Joke, yeah. So not me, I'm just maybe half that or less. So I worry about, I was really impressed with what Brian had to say about leaders leaning in and feeling uncomfortable and driving a level of innovation. I listen to it, I'm excited about it, but it also scares the crap out of me. Do we have the intestinal fortitude to do that, being a 140-year-old company that's highly regulated, that we sometimes will say have to ask for permission before we do things? But I see it, I see the seeds of innovation and transformation. We deal with a ton of technology that, frankly, if you asked me 10 years ago, I'd say, we're doing what? We're rolling out a private LTE network. We're transforming our control systems. We're doing a bunch of AI stuff in pockets, which I know we'll talk about. But we are driving a level of innovation, I think, that is unprecedented for a utility. Maybe in comparison to other industries, not so much, but I think in a way we actually benefit being not the first mover in this space.
And I think the interesting thing about utilities is there are so many value streams that have to come together, because you do have an end user experience. You do have customers who depend on that reliability and the service and all that. So bringing it all together across those business units is a key thing.
And I think the other thing that's interesting is I don't know that we always thought about the customer. Years ago, I think we thought about them as ratepayers. People that, because the way a utility operates is we don't make more money by providing more electricity. We earn a rate of return off of infrastructure capital replacement. That's the way we operate. And so I don't know that the customer is always top of mind, and now it is, because we want to provide that great customer experience. We haven't yet, and we're doing a bunch of things from an AI perspective to improve the level of customer experience that we're providing.
Now let's talk a little bit about what's happening in the broader environment that are really drivers that are pushing electric utilities to do new, different things, operate differently. There's a number of external factors, right? Decarbonization. If you could touch on some of that.
Yeah, well, thank you, Dash, for stealing a little of my thunder. But we do expect over an 80% increase. So we published a white paper, Pathway 2045. We're expecting 80 to 100% increase in electricity demand. We are going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Our ambition is by about 30%. The way that we're going to do that and the way we're going to see the demand increase by electrification, over 90% of buildings in California, 90+% adoption of electric vehicles. That's going to put a strain on the system. That's also going to increase the amount of capital we deploy to improve our infrastructure. And we can't do that at the same pace we've been working. The other challenge is wildfires and the spread of wildfires. And unfortunately, we had a recent tragedy, event, which many of you know. And so what we're trying to do in those things, we cannot scale with human beings. We have to figure out what automation, where can we make investments in sensors, what can we do to generate more helpful data. I think the other thing that is a challenge for us is also cybersecurity. The threat is ever increasing. Don't want to be a downer, but from a cybersecurity perspective, we spend a lot of time fighting and interpreting nation-state attacks. So if you think about if you're a foreign nation-state, I don't know, Russia, China, maybe Iran, and you want to do two things. You want to disrupt the financial system and disrupt electricity. So that's one of our challenges, making sure we are keeping up with the interconnected nature of the two-way flow of electricity that you mentioned, where we integrate distributed energy such as solar and wind, and make sure we integrate those into our ecosystem.
And there seems to be a lot more collaboration needed. You have generators. Folks here are probably generating some power and selling it back to the grid. You have to collaborate with AI companies who are going to be demanding that power, and that collaboration to set up grid technologies and how you're going to roll that out and where and when. I think that's a new thing for utilities, to have that collaborative force mixed in. Yeah.
One of the things from a integration and collaboration, so we're not competing with generators. I mean, we buy 80, 90% of our electricity, and the goal is to increase the amount of renewables. We've got renewable goals, but we have to collaborate. We need to figure out better ways to integrate that electricity, because of that increase in demand, we have to get the electricity in other ways.
That's where we turn to kind of our topic here, big data. Mm-hmm. Everything you've talked about is going to transform the way you collect data, use data by huge amounts. Multiples of the data you collect today is going to be required to operate this more complex environment. So what are you doing in terms of working with your business partners in establishing a big data framework that's going to support the future?
Well, if I reflect back over the last 10 years, I feel like, first it was reporting or business intelligence, and then it evolved into more predictive analytics, and now it's more, how do you come up with ideas or insights based on the data? So that mindset is evolving. We have weekly, daily conversations about the quality of our data, and the quality of our data and that ability to allow us to make better decisions and insights from the data is evolving. And I would say most people in the company are starting to understand the value of the integrity of our data. One of the ways that we acquire data, like if you think about the traditional way you acquire data, somebody does data entry, that's all changing. We get insights now, and we're evolving insights from LiDAR data, from satellite imagery, from drones, all those things in the future.
Third parties, weather forecasters.
Oh God, we are one of the biggest, it may be the biggest, weather forecasters on the West Coast, because we have, I think it's over 1,000 weather stations, and we use those weather stations to anticipate suboptimal conditions or conditions that might lead to the spread of a wildfire. So this whole data thing is also driving the integration of IT and OT. It's a very real thing where we have to figure out how do we integrate large amounts of data to forecast what the future is, and we can't do it by ourselves. We have to acquire the data in non-traditional ways from different sources, including partners, including weather stations, and start to make better decisions. We have to change the platforms we have and move more data to the cloud, which is what we're doing. But we also have a team of data scientists, which 10, 20 years ago we didn't have. Now we have teams of data scientists throughout the organization that to help build better insights. But it's not, I'm sitting here today talking about as if we've achieved the vision, and we have not. We have a long way to go.
And you mentioned OT, IT. That is a challenge with a lot of clients we talk to and talk about it all the time. How have you been able to integrate those two? And there's a lot of times very stark walls between that and...
Yeah, we had them separate. So there's the OT function, which was our control systems, and then the rest of IT stuff. So when I first started my job, I was fortunate enough to also already have the control systems. And I remember a meeting that I had with the head of distribution, and he said, I think we should move those control systems back into the business. So my question to him was, when we get compromised, or we get attacked, and our control systems get compromised, who's going to go to the CEO, me or you? He's like, okay, you can, I'm out. Mm-hmm. So then I was a beneficiary of the OT systems. So the convergence is a very real thing. The silos, they still exist, but we're merging many of those together, because what the reality is, a lot of the maybe traditional distribution capabilities, relays, updates, they're all becoming software-based. And because they're becoming software-based, what works better to update those is not a technician going out to the field and updating firmware, but it's a person that probably resembles more of an IT person that is updating the systems. We're going to see more of that as we roll out our smart meters, our new next generation of smart meters. That's the other area where I see there's a great amount of convergence, is deploying. While we have smart meters, I think in relation to where we're going to go, I think they're relatively dumb. So the future of the smart meter is like a small Linux-based computer that it's going to sit attached to your home. And so to roll that out, to deploy insights from that is going to be required very different foundation from a technology perspective.
And that's part of an OT, and I guess because that's software-driven deployment, it is easier to function as a IT element, which is a game changer. Yeah,
for sure a game changer. When we look how much true IT or OT type of devices, we've got 5 million smart meters out there, which will be smarter meters probably by 2030. We're going to have probably another 6+ million sensors out there that's going to enable the autonomous grid. We're going to have a private LTE completely deployed over the next 5 or 6 years, and thousands of weather stations, and all of those have to be integrated together.
So you can see it's very complex, huge amount of data. I mean, I've heard numbers of multi-millions of
petabytes, zettabytes.
Every day.
Yeah.
So now, kind of thinking about Brian's presentation and culture and iterative movements versus innovative, how have you been able to change the culture of a fairly legacy industry to think ahead and to start really innovating to achieve the drivers that are really pushing utilities?
Well, I think I've been able to do that because I'm a really funny guy. No, that really didn't land at all. Wow, tough crowd. All right. I'm going to start abusing the crowd before they abuse me. So I think for us, gaining insights through data and making sure we educate people and are not intimidated by the technology. So on the data piece, it's probably maybe one of the least sexy things we do, because CIOs are known for doing sexy things, right? This is a really tough crowd. So from a data perspective, it's more about centralizing centers of excellence, educating people, doing like, we'll say, the tough grunt work associated with data, strong data ownership, data governance, and it starts with the CEO, and it then goes to the COO, and then all the various constituents we have. So I think that's the hardest piece to do. The technology, we're rolling out all the standard cloud-based software capabilities and data warehouse like a Snowflake. We're doing all that. We've partnerships with Google and Amazon and Microsoft. And so we're doing all the technology fundamentals, but the longest pole in the tent is to get people to lean in. One is to measure the state of data quality, which I think we've done to some extent, but two, to drive more ownership into what good data governance, good data ownership looks like. That it sounds pretty easy. I mean, it sounds frankly a little boring.
One of the hardest things I've seen with our clients.
Absolutely. The people side of this, leaning in and making sure people feel like it is their responsibility to improve the quality of the data, because without the high quality data, AI is a pipe dream.
I think another key thing is everyone having that vision of the end-to-end linkage of that data and how it can be used in all this complexity to drive decisions and all the key things that you're trying to achieve. I don't think people often see that end-to-end versus the siloed, this is my data and what I use it for.
Yeah, I mean, getting people to give up seed control of some of the data is probably one of the hardest things we're doing. We're like, hey, we're not trying to take over yet, but completely, but people need to, let's say, not just relinquish control, but cede it to basically a COE where people can help. And we have to stop working off of anecdotes and drill down into the details, because that's what's going to move the needle. I mean, it doesn't sound very transformational, like what Brian was talking about earlier. I was very impressed, by the way, but it doesn't sound very transformational. But I think moving the needle on some of these foundational things is a little bit like grunt work, and we just have to keep pushing every day. And so my job is to educate my peers on what the art of the possible is. What does it mean when we have bad data? Unfortunately, not having good data about customer interactions or outages makes a rough interaction between our customers. And so I often use that example to help educate my peers with, okay, if you don't have good customer data, silly stuff like email and phone numbers, then if you think you're going to communicate with them during a very significant outage, you're fooling yourselves.
So we've talked a little about the industry and what it's like to run a utility. We talked about the challenge of data and where they're headed, the complexity, the amount of data that's going to be used for these vast new processes and supporting a lot of new innovation, being driven by the economy, by global, environmental issues and other things. So now let's apply AI on top of the environment.
Yeah.
And where do you see things headed? If you had to look 20 years from now, what's the utility of the future look like?
Well, I won't be working there
10
anymore.
years.
Okay. So one of the things that we're doing now is, I'd say, more focus on more of the back office functions, which from an AI perspective, and more generative AI, knowledge base. I wouldn't even call it quite self-healing, but it's more about making sure we provide people the tools that they need in order to make better decisions. So I'd say we're doing more of that stuff, but and some of these aren't even bold statements. Like why would we have an IT help desk? Why would we have a call center? Why do you need a human to do that when typically what they do is they read a script anyway, and they're answering questions sequentially based on their knowledge base. So in a small snippet of being bold, I'm like, let's figure out a future in that case where we don't have humans doing that work and kind of lean into that. But I mean, those are somewhat beneficial and more kind of testing the ground. But in, we'll say, 5 to 10 years, it's more about more of the opportunities to transform the way we operate is definitely on the grid. It's not how we do regulatory filings or how we answer the phone. That's interesting, but it's more creating a resilient grid, which things are going to move so quickly because of all the demand that we're going to place on the grid, all these DERs.
Two-way transfers,
two-way
marketplaces.
Yeah, it's going to be a very different world. And imagine a world of where nearly everybody has an electric vehicle, which could also be a power source, which could also be a source of a cybersecurity vulnerability. It's going to be a very different world. And so for us, transforming how do we maintain our assets in the field? Today, it's a human being that goes out and does an inspection. Tomorrow, it's going to be through acquiring images through whatever means we can and using those images to figure out the condition of an asset. And then in some cases, only then, or it could be looking at vegetation through satellite, which is something we're going to do pretty soon, and figure out how do you acquire that imagery, and then you reduce the overall cost of those inspections. That's more of a cost play, I would say, but probably also ends up being higher quality. But really the bigger play and the game changer for utility is how do you truly create that self-healing, completely reliable, no outage oriented grid where just much like an IT system where I think we'll have a kind of a network of network where the grid itself will be auto-responding, where the grid operator's job is, I don't know how old people are, I can't tell, but like the Maytag repairman of back in the day, like that, the grid operator's job should be very different from the way it operates today, which is a very manual, interactive process. In the future, it's figuring out what is the narrative, what is the responses we get when we get updates from millions of sensors out there, and a human being is not going to have the capability to respond, only the AI will. I think that's 5 to 10 years out. And, Brian's presentation earlier is...
Got to take it to 2.
What's that?
Got to take it to 2 or 3 years out.
Yes, yeah, we need to kind of lean into it and be bold and be brave.
Do you have any thoughts or insights on the power outage in Spain, Portugal? My guess is their system got overwhelmed and couldn't handle the information, and if AI was maybe applied there, they would have.
So I'm not going to say the Russians did it. They didn't, by the way, or maybe they did. But I think it was a convergence of different weather patterns, where there was weather extremes, and what I think the AI will do in the future is could better regulate things like that from having extreme situations. We are fortunate to live in Southern California where the weather extremes are not quite as extreme. But I do think there is a strong play for AI in the future that'll help regulate some of that fluctuation.
Yeah. I think we're down to just a few seconds here, but thanks again for joining us and providing your insights. I think the key thing is, if I put the last Brian's presentation together with yours, is think current, but also think where can you push and take an industry like utilities and help accelerate that transformation.
I also feel like listening to Brian, I felt like this moment in Animal House where they're like, let's do it, and then they run out. Like that's our call to action for us, is like, let's do it, and let's figure out a way to be bold and make a difference, because I feel like this is a time for us as technologists to make a significant contribution to society.
Sure is. Well, again, thank you. Hope you all enjoyed listening to Todd today. He was quite interesting, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to Ashiss.